Returning the favor, Eva's body finally surrendered on the courthouse steps after 18 months of grueling divorce warfare. When her ex-husband stormed into St. Louis General, demanding to see his wife, the hospital volunteer in scrub stepped forward with quiet authority. "She's with me now." Her ex crumbled, watching a stranger protect her with more devotion than he'd ever shown. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across St. Louis's family court building as Eva Thompson clutched the finalized divorce papers against her chest. 18 months of legal battles had stripped away everything: her savings, her confidence, and nearly her sanity. The man she'd once loved had transformed their marriage into a psychological war zone, using every weapon at his disposal to maintain control as their union crumbled. Her legs trembled as she descended the courthouse steps, the papers feeling impossibly heavy in her hands. Each page testified to how thoroughly her ex-husband had tried to destroy her spirit. He'd contested every asset, delayed every hearing, and painted her as an unstable gold digger in court documents that would follow her forever. The autumn air bit at her face, but Eva barely felt the cold. Exhaustion had become her constant companion these past months, stealing her appetite, her sleep, and her ability to focus on anything but surviving each day. As a pediatric nurse at St. Louis General, she'd always prided herself on her strength, her ability to comfort families during their darkest hours. Now she could barely comfort herself. Her phone buzzed with another text from her ex. "This isn't over, Eva. You think you've won, but I know where you work. I know your schedule." The chilling words sent ice through her veins. Even with the divorce final, he wouldn't let go. For him, their marriage had never been about love. It had been about possession and control, the thrill of having someone completely under his influence. Eva's vision blurred as she reached the sidewalk. The stress of the past year had taken a devastating toll on her body. She'd lost pounds she couldn't afford to lose, surviving on coffee and adrenaline while ignoring warning signs that her nursing training should have recognized. The world tilted sideways, and her knees buckled, scattering the divorce papers like autumn leaves on the ground. Pedestrians rushed past, too preoccupied with their lives to notice another person in crisis. Eva's last coherent thought was wondering if this was how her patients' families felt utterly alone in their most desperate moments. She never felt herself hit the ground. What she did feel, floating somewhere between consciousness and darkness, was strong arms lifting her with infinite care. The touch was different from anything she'd experienced in years, protective without being possessive, gentle without being weak. Whoever held her radiated a quiet confidence that made her body instinctively relax for the first time in months. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The voice was deep, concerned, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe." Through her haze, Eva caught glimpses of expensive leather boots, a distinctive watch quickly covered by surgical scrub sleeves, and hands that looked both capable and surprisingly soft. Her rescuer moved with the fluid efficiency of someone accustomed to emergencies. But there was something else, a tenderness that suggested he understood trauma intimately. The next thing she knew, she was being carried through the familiar halls of St. Louis General's pediatric wing, the sounds and smells of the hospital wrapping around her like a security blanket. But this was different from her usual entrance through the staff parking garage. She was being carried like she mattered, like she was precious cargo that required the utmost care. "Mark, thank God you're here," called Dr. Lisa Moore, the pediatric wing's head physician. "What happened?" Found her collapsed outside the courthouse. Dehydration, exhaustion, probably hasn't eaten properly in days. "Can we get room 304? Eva's eyes fluttered open just enough to see her rescuer's profile. Strong jawline shadowed with stubble, dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it, and eyes that held depths of understanding she'd rarely encountered. He wore standard hospital volunteer scrubs, but the way he moved and the confidence he exuded suggested he didn't quite fit the usual volunteer profile. "I know her," Moore said, recognition dawning. "Eva Thompson, one of our best pediatric nurses. She's been going through a brutal divorce?" "Eva," the man said softly. The staff called him Mark, but something about the way he said her name suggested depths she couldn't fathom. Her name sounded different in his voice, not like a label or possession, but like something beautiful worth protecting. "You're safe now." As he settled her onto the examination bed in room 304, Eva caught a better look at his hands, which were as contradictory as his presence, calloused in ways that suggested physical work, yet manicured with precision that spoke of boardrooms and business meetings. A thin line of an expensive watch peeked from under his scrub sleeve before he quickly adjusted the fabric to hide it. "I'll take care of her," he told Doctor, more with an authority that bypassed normal hospital protocols. "Page me if you need anything." Doc Moore nodded without question, which struck Eva as odd. Hospital volunteers, no matter how dedicated, usually didn't take charge of patient care decisions. But exhaustion pulled her back under before she could analyze the strangeness of the situation. She drifted in and out of consciousness as her mysterious rescuer worked beside her, checking her pulse with practiced precision and adjusting her IV with the confidence of someone who'd done this countless times before. His touch was professional yet personal, as if he genuinely cared about her recovery rather than just following medical protocols. Have you ever woken up to find a stranger had become your protector? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. Hours passed in a blur of gentle voices and careful hands. When Eva finally surfaced fully, the room was dim except for the soft glow of medical monitors. The man the hospital staff called Mark sat in the chair beside her bed, reading what looked like a medical journal, but quickly closed it when he noticed her stirring. "How do you feel?" he asked, leaning forward with genuine concern. "Like I've been hit by a truck," Eva managed, her voice rough. "But better. Thank you." She paused, trying to piece together how she'd gotten here. "What happened exactly?" "You collapsed outside the courthouse. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, dangerously low blood sugar." His eyes searched her face with the intensity of someone looking for deeper injuries. "When did you last have a proper meal?" Eva tried to remember and couldn't. The past weeks had blurred together in a haze of legal meetings, court appearances, and the desperate attempt to maintain her nursing responsibilities, while her personal life imploded. "I don't know," she admitted. "Everything's been difficult." Mark's expression darkened with an emotion she couldn't identify. "The divorce? How did you—" Moore mentioned it. "I volunteer here for several years. I've seen a lot of people dealing with family trauma." He paused, studying her with those perceptive eyes. "What you're going through, it's not just difficult. It's systematic destruction designed to break your spirit." The accuracy of his assessment sent a chill through her. "You sound like you speak from experience." I do grief counseling for families here. You learn to recognize the signs of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, psychological warfare." His voice carried a weight that suggested personal knowledge beyond professional training. "Someone's been working very hard to convince you that you're nothing without them." Eva felt tears threatening. In 18 months of legal battles, no one had understood the true nature of what she'd endured. Everyone saw the surface, a messy divorce, two people who couldn't get along. Only Mark seemed to recognize the deliberate cruelty behind her ex-husband's actions. "He's not wrong, though," she whispered. "I'm nothing now. No savings, barely keeping up with my job, living in a studio apartment because it's all I can afford." "Stop." Mark's voice was firm but not harsh. "Everything you just described are external circumstances, temporary situations that can be changed. They're not who you are." Before Eva could respond, the room door burst open with enough force to rattle the medical equipment. Her ex-husband stood in the doorway, his face flushed with the familiar combination of anger and entitlement that had dominated the final years of their marriage. "Where is my wife?" he demanded, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Eva. "Eva, what the hell are you doing here? We need to talk about the settlement." "My lawyer says ex-wife," Mark corrected, rising from his chair with fluid grace. Though he wasn't particularly tall, something about his presence seemed to fill the room. "And visiting hours are over." "Who the hell are you?" Her ex-husband's voice carried the dismissive tone he'd always used with people he considered beneath him. Some orderly trying to play doctor. "I'm the person she's with now," Mark replied with calm authority. "The person who was there when she collapsed from the stress you put her through. The person who's going to make sure she's protected while she recovers." The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Eva watched her ex-husband's face cycle through surprise, anger, and something that looked almost like fear. In all their years together, he'd never seen her protected by anyone except herself. "She's my wife," her ex spat. "Was," Mark interrupted, past tense. "And if you cared about her well-being, you wouldn't be here demanding more from someone who just collapsed from exhaustion." Her ex-husband's jaw worked silently as he processed this unexpected resistance. He'd spent 18 months systematically dismantling Eva's support system, isolating her from friends and family who might interfere with his control. The appearance of this stranger, this protector, clearly threw him off his carefully planned script. "Eva," he said, switching to the manipulative tone that had once fooled her into thinking he cared. "You know I only want what's best for us. We can work this out. You don't need to involve strangers in our private business." "The business is finished," Eva said, finding strength in Mark's steady presence. "The papers are signed. It's over." "Nothing's over until I say it's over," her ex-husband snapped, his mask slipping to reveal the cruel controller underneath. "I know where you work. I know your schedule." "I know nothing," Mark said, stepping between them with protective authority. "And if you continue threatening her, I'll call security and have you banned from this hospital permanently." The threat carried weight beyond what a typical volunteer should possess. Her ex-husband seemed to sense this, his bravado faltering as he recognized something dangerous in Mark's calm demeanor. "This isn't over, Eva," he said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "You'll realize you need me. You always do." After he left, the room felt lighter despite the emotional upheaval. Eva looked at Mark with new eyes, seeing past the volunteer scrubs to the man underneath, someone who'd faced down her tormentor without breaking a sweat, who'd claimed her as his own with a confidence that suggested he was accustomed to getting what he wanted. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one's ever protected you," he finished. "That's going to change." The promise in his voice sent heat through her that had nothing to do with fever. For the first time in years, Eva felt truly safe and inexplicably powerfully attracted to the man who made that safety possible. But as she studied his face in the dim hospital lighting, questions began forming. The staff called him Mark, but who was he really? And why did someone who volunteered at a children's hospital move with the authority of a man accustomed to absolute power? The week that followed changed everything Eva thought she knew about healing. Mark appeared at her bedside every morning before her shift, carrying coffee that tasted infinitely better than the hospital's usual brew. He never explained how he knew she took it black with just a whisper of cinnamon, but somehow he did. The small gesture felt monumental after years of a marriage where her preferences had been systematically ignored or dismissed. "You don't have to keep checking on me," Eva told him on her third day back at work, though her heart raced every time she saw his familiar silhouette in the pediatric wing doorway. "I know I don't have to," Mark replied, settling into the chair beside the nurse's station where she was updating patient charts. "I want to." The distinction mattered more than she could express. Her ex-husband had always framed his controlling behavior as obligation, things he had to do, because she couldn't be trusted to manage her own life. Mark's presence felt entirely different, chosen, protective, without being possessive. "Doctor," Moore paused in her rounds, observing their easy interaction with obvious approval. "Mark, have you been helping with the overnight admissions?" "Just providing extra support where needed." Mark answered with characteristic modesty, though Eva had noticed several parents specifically asking for him during their children's difficult procedures. There was something almost magical about watching Mark with the pediatric patients. He possessed an intuitive understanding of childhood fear that went beyond standard volunteer training.